Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a really fascinating document, one that's basically trying to solve arguably the biggest economic puzzle of our time. We are unpacking the World Bank Group's newly minted Country Partnership Framework for India, which covers the fiscal years 2026 to 2031. And look, this isn't just some dry, boring policy document. It is a wildly ambitious strategy for transforming an entire subcontinent.
Think about this for a second. How does a nation of 1.4 billion people completely upgrade its economy in a single generation? It's a staggering thought. India is currently the world's most populous country, and its recent progress really does provide a massive foundation for the future. I mean, over the past 2 decades alone, living standards have tripled, and hundreds of millions of people have been lifted out of poverty. But the next leap? That is where the sheer scale of this economic journey gets truly historic.
That monumental leap actually has a name. It's called Viksit Bharat. It's the government of India's vision to transform into a fully developed, high-income nation by the year 2047, which, not coincidentally, is exactly 100 years after its independence. To really grasp the gravity of this, we kind of have to contrast India's current milestones with its day-to-day reality. Yes, it is the 4th largest economy in the world, but on the ground, it's still classified as a lower middle-income country, with a per capita GDP of around $2,700. Bridging that massive gap, that requires a monumental shift. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to use a clear roadmap today. First, the 2047 vision. Second, the engine of job creation. Third, upgrading rural and urban India. Fourth, investing in people and the economy. And finally, the World Bank's pivot to becoming a leveraging bank.
Part 1. The 2047 Vision, charting the path to Viksit Bharat.
So, to actually hit that 2047 target, the government specifically asked the World Bank to help them transition away from the old, resource-heavy style of growth. They need to seize new opportunities through really inclusive, private sector-led development. What that means in practice is infusing a ton of technical and managerial know-how through trade and foreign direct investment, and seamlessly linking their own domestic suppliers right into global value chains.
Part 2. The engine, fueling a generational shift through job creation.
The entire cross-cutting objective, the absolute core of this whole plan, is faster and better job creation by the private sector. The framework explicitly targets generating millions of new, high-quality jobs. And the crucial metric to watch here is how they unlock the potential of youth and women. In fact, addressing the constraints on the female labor force, that is essentially the master key to this entire growth model. It's literally the metric by which the success of the whole endeavor is going to be judged.
Part 3. Upgrading rural and urban India, building the physical foundations.
Well, let's start with the 60% of Indians currently living in rural areas. Almost half the population still gets their primary livelihood from agriculture. So the goal here isn't just about better farming. It's about making rural jobs so secure and remunerative that packing up and moving to a crowded city becomes a choice, not just a survival necessity. This means aggressively pushing crop diversification, totally modernizing supply chains, and seriously enabling climate resilience for millions of people.
But on the flip side, the urban challenge, it is absolutely staggering. By 2050, India's urban population is projected to nearly double, hitting around 800 million people. To handle that kind of influx, cities are going to need about $2.5 trillion in infrastructure. Trillion with a T. That's essentially like building entirely new massive megacities from scratch in just a couple of decades. Cities are supposed to be engines of economic growth, but they just cannot function if their physical and service capacities aren't radically scaled up. So, what do these upgrades actually look like on the ground? Well, they're super specific. Modernize agriculture, hook farmers up to digital ecosystems, fund women-led rural businesses. And in the cities, complete overhauls of water, waste, and air quality. And crucially, they have to figure out how to get private finance to pay for it all. Because let's be real, local city governments simply do not have the creditworthiness to fund a $2.5 trillion gap on their own. Every single step here directly connects back to creating a stable environment for those millions of jobs we talked about.
Part 4. Investing in people and economy, scaling human and physical capital.
Now, what's really interesting here is this dual focus. On one side, you have human capital, making sure people are healthy and the graduates are actually, job ready when they leave school. It spans the entire life cycle, from childhood nutrition all the way up to secondary education and adaptive skilling. On the other side, you've got economic capital, building out the green grid and massive transport networks. You're basically building up the workers while simultaneously building the clean, modern machinery they'll be operating.
And the specific steps for these economic upgrades are mapped out really clearly.
Step 1, expand renewable energy and grid storage to hit those low-emission targets by 2070. 2, vastly improve transport and logistics. We're talking ports, rail, and e-mobility. 3, manage water resources and flood resilience so these shiny new investments don't wash away. And 4, promote economy-wide efficiency reforms. This massive scaling of infrastructure is explicitly designed to support India's major domestic programs like the Make in India initiative, drawing foreign direct investment right into a highly capable domestic ecosystem.
Which leaves us with the literal trillion-dollar question. How does anyone actually pay for all this? Part 5. Becoming a leveraging bank. The strategic pivot.
This is where we see a massive paradigm shift. Traditionally, the World Bank was a lending bank. They'd basically write checks for public infrastructure straight off their own balance sheet. But for India's trillion-dollar needs, that old model just doesn't cut it anymore. The new model is becoming the leveraging bank. Instead of just loaning money directly, the World Bank is going to use its funds like a giant protective umbrella. It absorbs those initial scary risks of giant projects, making it safe enough for massive amounts of private commercial capital to finally flood in.
There's this one quote from the framework that really hits the nail on the head. Listen to this. The key constraint is not capital per se, but rather limited availability of long-term finance and insufficient willingness of investors. Think about that for a second. India actually has ample domestic wealth. The money literally already exists, but commercial investors are just terrified of long-term development risks. So the World Bank is stepping in to be the ultimate risk absorber.
To put some real numbers to this strategy, the government of India is initially seeking a financing volume of $8 to $10 billion every single year from the World Bank Group. That is the seed money, the anchor, if you will.
But here is the real ambition, the whole budget plus concept. They want to use that initial $8 to $10 billion to leverage an extra $20 billion from private markets annually. It's a massive multiplier effect. You prove the model works, you remove the initial risk, and you open the floodgates for private investors to come in and scale these projects nationally. Which leaves us with one final, really big question to think about. If this framework succeeds, if this massive shift from just lending to leveraging actually unlocks the trillions needed to transition 1.4 billion people into a high-income, climate-resilient, job-rich economy by 2047, will India's blueprint for Viksit Bharat become the new gold standard for global development everywhere? It is a staggering experiment in financial engineering and human capital, and it is all happening right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.